The movie starts with Professor Joseph Heiter sitting in his Mercedes, staring at a photo. The picture shows three dogs standing one behind the other. As he looks at the photo, a truck pulls over nearby, and the driver heads into the forest to use the bathroom. Seizing the moment, Professor Joseph shoots and kills the truck driver. Meanwhile, two young American women, Jenny and Lindsay, are on vacation in Germany. They had been enjoying their time at a club and are now trying to find their way to a party. Despite their adventurous spirits, they don't know much about the German landscape and are relying on a rented car. The dense forest and winding roads quickly confuse them, and as they try to turn around, their car tire bursts, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere with no phone signal to call for help. Panic sets in as they realize the severity of their predicament. The forest surrounds them, and the main road, devoid of any signs of civilization, stretches out ominously. They decide to stay in the car, hoping that a passing vehicle might provide the help they need. After an anxious wait, an old man driving by slows down. But instead of offering aid, he begins to verbally harass them, making crude comments that only heighten their fear. Terrified, they lock the car doors and watch helplessly as he eventually drives away, leaving them in a more desperate state. With no other options, Jenny and Lindsay decide to leave the car and search for help on foot. The darkness and unfamiliar terrain make their journey perilous. They trudge through the forest, their clothes and spirits dampened by an unexpected downpour. Through the veil of rain, they spot a faint light emanating from a house in the distance. Desperation fuels their steps as they make their way to the house, drenched and shivering by the time they reach it. Knocking on the door, they are greeted by Professor Joseph Heiter. The girls quickly explain their situation, pleading for assistance to call for emergency car repairs. The professor, masking his sinister intentions with a facade of hospitality, invites them inside. The interior of the house is unsettling, adorned with disturbing paintings that hint at the twisted mind of their host. Ignoring their repeated requests to call for help, Joseph instead begins questioning him about their visit to Germany. He learns that they are from New York and are here as tourists. Despite their unease, the girls remain hopeful that he will assist them. Pretending to make a call, Joseph disappears into the kitchen, where he secretly mixes a drug into a glass of water. He returns with the drugged water, offering it to the unsuspecting women. Lindsay drinks it, but Jenny, sensing something amiss, accidentally drops her glass. Irritated by her suspicion, Joseph's demeanor changes. He heads to the basement under the pretense of cleaning up, but his true intention is to prepare a syringe. Jenny, still conscious, grows increasingly uneasy and demands that Joseph make the call again. He dismisses her concerns and, without warning, injects her with a sedative. The drug takes effect instantly, rendering her unconscious. When Jenny and Lindsay wake up, they find themselves in a nightmarish scenario. They are strapped to hospital beds in a sterile, clinical lab. The realization of their captivity dawns on them, and they see the truck driver, who had been shot earlier, now lifeless on a nearby table. Professor Joseph enters the lab, coldly informing the incapacitated truck driver that his time has come. He administers a lethal injection, and the driver dies almost instantly. With a chilling calmness, Joseph buries the body in his garden, his actions methodical and devoid of remorse. The professor then turns his attention to the unconscious Japanese man who now shares the room with Jenny and Lindsay. As the Japanese man regains consciousness, the three captives begin to scream in terror. Professor Joseph steps forward to clarify his horrific intentions. Introducing himself as a retired surgeon, he reveals his insane medical ambition, creating a human centipede. He proudly recounts his previous success with dogs and declares his intent to replicate the experiment with human subjects. The captives are horrified as he outlines the gruesome details of the surgery he plans to perform. Joseph explains that he will remove their knee ligaments to prevent them from standing and then surgically connect the mouth to rectum. Subject A, the Japanese man, will be the lead, Subject B, Lindsay, will be in the middle, and Subject C, Jenny, will be at the rear. He describes how the skin from their hips will be grafted to their jaws to complete the connection. The grotesque design ensures that when Subject A eats, the waste will pass into Subject B, and subsequently into Subject C. The surgery begins with Joseph administering anesthesia to the Japanese man, rendering him unconscious. Jenny screams, pleading for mercy, but Joseph approaches with another syringe. In the meantime, Lindsay, using her teeth, manages to free herself from her restraints. Despite the intense pain from the IV needles ripping at her skin, she escapes the lab and runs through the house, desperately seeking a way out. Lindsay finds temporary refuge in a room, barricading herself inside. Joseph, however, is relentless. He breaks through a window to reach her, forcing her to flee once more. She stumbles into a pool, but Joseph is close behind. He covers the pool with a lid, trapping her underwater. Just as she is about to lose hope, a power outage plunges the house into darkness. Seizing the opportunity, Lindsay escapes into the night. She makes her way back to the lab, determined to save Jenny. Finding her friend still unconscious, she struggles to drag her outside. But before they can make their escape, Joseph intercepts them and injects both with sedatives. They are once again prisoners in his twisted game. Joseph carries them back to the lab and resumes his horrific work. He meticulously removes their knee ligaments and teeth, marks their bodies with a marker, and proceeds with the long, excruciating operation to create his human centipede. Days later, Joseph is shown enjoying a drink, his gaze fixed on his monstrous creation. The three victims are now surgically connected, their wounds fresh and painful. Joseph forces them to stand, taking photographs to document his success. The sight of their condition reflected in a mirror elicits a torrent of anguished cries. Joseph confines them to a cage, treating them like animals, further dehumanizing them. As days pass, the suffering intensifies. The professor forces the Japanese man to eat, observing the subsequent digestive process. He revels in the grotesque spectacle, breaking the Japanese man's jaws when he refuses to comply. The horror reaches new heights as the Japanese man is forced to defecate into Lindsay's mouth, who in turn must pass the waste to Jenny. The degrading process is as sickening as it is horrifying. Despite the physical and psychological torment, Joseph continues his experiment, checking their medical conditions regularly. He finds that while the Japanese man is in relatively stable condition, Lindsay suffers from severe constipation, unable to digest the human waste she is forced to consume. Jenny, at the end of the chain, receives no sustenance and grows weaker by the day. Her wounds remain fresh, and she appears close to death. Joseph considers relocating her to keep his experiment going. The situation takes a turn when two police officers arrive at Joseph's home, investigating the disappearance of Jenny and Lindsay. Their abandoned car had been found near the professor's house, raising suspicions. Joseph greets them, feigning ignorance and insisting he knows nothing about the missing girls. The officers, growing suspicious, accept his offer of water, not realizing it is drugged. As they begin to feel the effects of the drug, the officers confront Joseph, who becomes agitated. Realizing his cover is blown, he tries to incapacitate them with a syringe. The officers manage to escape and head to their car to retrieve a warrant. In their absence, the human centipede attempts a desperate escape. They stab Joseph with a surgical knife, but their weakened state hinders their progress. As they struggle up the stairs, bleeding and in agony, Joseph follows, licking their blood from the steps in a macabre display. In a final act of defiance, the Japanese man breaks a mirror and uses the shard to cut Joseph's neck, killing him. The police officers return, discovering the aftermath of the horrific ordeal. One officer, succumbing to the effects of the drugged water, searches the house and finds the human centipede, their condition pitiable and dire. Confronting Joseph, who is barely alive, the officer witnesses the professor's final moments as he dies from his wounds. The house descending into silence. The human centipede, left to their tragic fate, represents the horrific consequences of one man's madness. Their cries echo through the empty halls, a haunting reminder of the terror they endured at the hands of a deranged surgeon. The story ends on a grim note, leaving the audience to grapple with the profound horror of the events that transpired.